thundering now. A song of hope from sons and daughters crying out.
My sound wasn't on. Hi, welcome everyone to another evening of Every Nation Campus Ghent. Tonight we are gonna have a dinner talk. Yes, it's that Thursday of the month. It's the last Thursday of the month. And if you're just joining in or if you're still tuning in, I would love to welcome you. We're gonna get started. I am so happy to see that you were able to join us again tonight. Now, let me quickly explain what we're going to do tonight. And basically, we're going to have a dinner talk. And you might have seen it already on Facebook or on Instagram. We normally do these dinner talks in person because, well, to eat together, you need to be together, right? Well, with all this Corona thing going on, I have found that, well, you can eat together as well online. Well, even though I cannot pass on or hand out my food through the camera, that would be fun, right? Because then I would be able to cook for everyone and just pass it out through my computer. And that is not going to work unless we want my computer to crash, and we don't want that tonight. Basically, we normally eat together on a Tuesday once a month with lots of students from different faculties, different courses, educations that they are doing here in Ghent. And then after that, we basically have a debate or discussion around a hot topic that students are busy with or have questions about. So usually we've had topics like LGBTQ plus feminism, world religions, church history, the environment, and climate change. Basically, anything and everything that a student can be busy with and that people can have questions about. So that's basically what we do. And then we usually debate and discuss first in a very respectful way. And then we do that from different points of view on that topic. So we look at different worldviews. What do they have to say about this topic? And can we come to a conclusion, yes or no? And it's actually very interesting because it's students from different backgrounds. Some of them are say like, I don't have really a belief, I haven't made up my mind. Others say I'm an atheist. Others say no, I'm an agnost. And some actually say, well, I'm Muslim, or I'm a naturalist, or I'm a Christian. And all of these together make for very interesting debates. And I have already, over the last 4 years of doing dinner talks, learned a lot from basically every student that has attended. And they've pushed me to go and look for more information, do more research on topics. And basically, well, with this challenge of quarantine and the coronavirus, I was now challenged. How are we gonna do our dinner talks? So tonight, first and foremost, if you haven't eaten yet, please do so while I'm talking. After all, it's a dinner talk. I'm having lasagna, and you can't see it right now, but I would love for you to, before we start, to take a picture of what you're gonna eat tonight, or of what you're eating, or what you're drinking, and like just share it. Make my mouth water and my stomach roll and all that kind of stuff. But we can still eat together online. So that's the first. Secondly, after our talk tonight, we'll be having a Google Hangouts call with multiple students from here in Ghent. And basically, the link is on our Facebook page. So if you want to hang out, if you're in need of community, or we can debate further over there on the Google Hangouts, then please let me know, and then we'll do that. It's all set up. You just have to click on it, and then hopefully you have a Google Hangout. Otherwise, you can, while I'm talking, just quickly make it on and make it happen already. Now, with that said, that's what's going to happen tonight, or what tonight's going to look like. Now, tonight specifically, I want to discuss with you or talk to you about different worldviews. And with worldviews, the title of tonight's dinner talks is "What lenses are you looking through?" Now, once a month, at the end of the month, we do this dinner talk, and it's basically a wrap up of our sermon series. But we don't approach a topic from a very Christianese point of view. This is not a sermon. If you want a sermon, then I'll be happy to give you one this weekend or tomorrow. But tonight, we're actually going to look at how is the gospel and how are different worldviews applicable to our lives and to the way we look at things in life. So what are the lenses we are looking through? Now, how are we going to talk? Because obviously, I'm the one doing all the talking right now, and you guys are just on the receiving end. So what I want you to do is, on our YouTube page, we have something called a video chat. And I have this chat open on my computer. So I want you to be able to post all your questions or your comments on things that I'm saying in there. I'm going to ask a few very deliberate questions as well while I'm talking, and or during the talk during tonight. And I would love to hear your replies. So this is an engaging tool. This is the goal is for you guys to communicate with me. And I know this is not ideal, but this way it puts the platform open for a lot more people than we would usually do. So go to your chat, put your chat open, and make sure you get your questions, remarks, or different points of view in there. And I'm going to try and read as many of them as I can. And we're going to try and debate or answer them as many as we can. And obviously, we're also going to debate during our Google Hangouts call after tonight's dinner talk. So please stay on that with all of us. We'd love to have you for the whole ride this evening. Now, with that said, the first question I'm going to ask again is, what are you having for dinner tonight? Can you please take a picture, put it in the chat group so me and other people can see it, and make each other hungry, make each other jealous. If it's a piece of chocolate, then, well, I would love to have some right now. But let's do that first before we do anything else. Okay, all right. Now let's see, there are already, hi, Veel te dure keuken. I have no idea what your name actually is, but hi, welcome. And hi, Micha. It's nice to see you and all the others that are online. Now let's get this thing started, shall we? I have to get to my first slide because he's on my last one. Yay! Okay, so the first one is what is a worldview? And dinner is ready. Yay! So I want to talk to you today about what are the lenses that you're looking through different worldviews in light of the gospel. And none of my slides are in the right order. Yikes. Okay. That means a lot of clicking today. Now, and this is also not in the right order. Let's see if I can adjust that one. Nope, I cannot. Okay, so I'm gonna be very small the whole evening, and the slides are gonna be very big the whole evening as well, apparently. Now, I wanted to start with a quick definition of what is actually a worldview and why is this a topic that we want to debate tonight. Well, first and foremost, a worldview in itself is, according to Merriam-Webster dictionary, is a comprehensive conception or apprehension of the world, especially from a specific standpoint. So I'll read it again. It's a comprehensive conception or apprehension of the world, especially from a specific standpoint. Now, what does this entail? I want to talk to you about this worldviews because I've found for myself that it influences actually quite a lot. For example, in my job as a occupational therapist, the way I would approach sickness or disease, or I would approach topics like death. I worked in a nursing home, and I had several of my clients actually that passed away in the meantime. And the way I see the world, the way my worldview is formed and determined, will determine how I will treat that patient at that moment that is on their deathbed. How I will treat the family. And obviously, we'll all be kind and compassionate, but that's not actually what I mean. When the point comes to it, then your worldview will determine if that is that, and that's where life ends, or if you're actually saying, no, I believe there is something as life after that, whether that is reincarnation or something else. And that will determine if you can give someone hope because you have a different set of beliefs. Now, this worldview ideally is actually formed by us doing research and thinking about it, but most often that's not the case. So tonight, let's put on our thinking caps. We're gonna dive deeper into that. Now let's look for where my second slide is. Basically, while I'm looking for it, yep, not that one. Yes, this one is the one I'm looking for. So basically, your worldview can be determined by the answers on these 5 questions that you see right here. So the questions that you're asking concerning origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, those answers, they will inform your entire worldview and how you look through it. Now, all of us have asked those 4 questions in life in general at one point or another. For example, where do I come from? Where do I originate from? As a child, we'll often ask our moms, and they will say like, oh, it was in Dutch ooievaar. I don't know what it's in English, but like this white type of bird. If you watch Dumbo, then they drop Dumbo, the little elephant, with his mommy elephant. Or in Flanders here, we often say they're born in flower collies, something like that. But we've all had the question multiple times in our life, where do I come from? Where do I originate from? But we've also asked the question, who am I? And how do I account for the origin of life? Or why am I here? What is the meaning of life? And what does it mean to be human, morality? And is there life after that, destiny? What is happening? Is this it? Or is this more to life or not? And all of that will determine how you look into life. For example, one of those phrases that my brother, he is 18 or 19, he actually turned 19 this week. Oops, sorry, Arno. Um, well, one of those things that he often says is, you all know the phrase YOLO, you only live once. But if you say like there is no life after that, then there is no reason for you to be actually concerned with how you live life right now, because you live life right now just to the fullest. You do what you think is right, because no one's going to keep you accountable, because there is no such thing as life after that. But if there is, that informs quite a lot, and then the way we're going to fill that in determines then the rest of that again. For example, is there then such a thing as someone that is going to keep you accountable, or is there just a reincarnation of life and you just need to try and live as good as possible? But then what does it mean to be human? Who determines what is right and wrong and good? Now, those are deep questions, and not everyone is into doing the research behind them. The good thing is that you also don't necessarily need to do all the specific research behind them. You can just generally, foundationally think about it. What would you answer them? And we'll see tonight that there are a few things that if you can accomplish that, then you're actually good in forming your worldview. Now, reality is most people don't actually think about how would I fill that in for me, and are my answers actually consistent? Do I actually believe them? Do I actually live those answers? Now, with that said, where is my question? I basically wanted to ask you, have you actually thought about what informs your worldview and what has determined your worldview? So maybe in the comments right now, you can just quickly write in the chat what informs your worldview, what has determined your worldview, the yellow question that you see right now on the slide, and what informs our worldview. And I'm gonna look after the answers. Oh, nice, Hannah. You are eating chicken madras. Enjoy, girl. Oh, that's strange. Okay. Hi, Brit. Nice, Micha. Rice, salmon, and spinach dish. Nice. Okay. So, what informs our worldview and what has determined your worldview? So, if you want, you can answer that right now. So, for example, for me, I've had actually multiple cases. What can determine your worldview is, for example, the culture you grew up in, or the your environment that you grew up in, your family, your upbringing, the way you were brought up, your childhood home. Education has a lot to do with it. Your primary school, whether you grew up in the city or on the countryside. Not just your school, but also your friends, and your educational level. Do you have did you quit after high school, or did you actually went to college? Do you have a bachelor, master's, PhD? The educational institute you went to will determine a lot of your worldview. They have a huge influence right then and there. But also, for example, past experiences, trauma, things you went through as a person from during childhood. Because I don't know if you've heard about the term belief drives behavior. Now, Trevor, well, my boss and my pastor is pretty big on that. And basically, if you experience something, then you start having an emotion on that. You start meditating, thinking about that. And then you ultimately form a belief on that. And that belief will inform your future behavior. So, for example, if your mom always used to say, Natanya, don't eat as much chocolate. Now, every time I eat chocolate, I will start hearing that voice in my head, and that voice will determine how I behave. I will put the chocolate back in the cupboard. So that is one thing that will influence that. This was a small example, but like on the bigger examples, and what also will determine will determine your worldview is your person, who you are. So the way you think, different people have different way of thinking. You have left brain people, you have right brain people, you have people that are a lot more creative, and then you have a lot more people that are into knowledge and into science and into understanding and logic and reason. And then you have the visionaries and the strategists. And those ways of thinking will start informing your behavior as well, and your worldview as well. It will inform not just the content of your worldview, because that's doing research and figuring things out, but it will inform the way you research certain things, the way you start answering certain questions, or if you actually start answering other questions on those questions. So, for example, if we're talking about the origin of life, if you are a very logical thinker, then you're going to start looking at, okay, what's the problem? How can I solve it? Where can I logically find the answers in this equation? And then you're going to think about that in a logic way. Versus when you're very creative, you're going to go a lot more, or you might go a lot more to experience based, as in the other one would go into research based, for example. Now, there is nothing wrong with both, but the way you are functioning is informing the way you will go about those questions, and how intentional you will be with thinking about your thinking, with thinking about your worldviews and how that is being formed. So I see a few answers here on YouTube. Thanks for that, guys. Where mostly my parents, friends as well, but also my own experience. Okay. Hi, Fatou. Nice to see you. Okay. Geology in your bachelor's, and that has had a great impact on your worldview, especially on the topic of our origin. I can imagine that. Yeah, that's definitely one of them. So you guys are basically with me on that same page. I would encourage you, though, to actually look for multiple of those answers, and of the multiple factors that I just listed. There are definitely more, but this is just like a broad list to get you to start thinking about things. I'm quite curious, though, Mr. Positive Man. I actually am not sure about your name, but it's nice to see you on here. Since you study geology, in what way has that impacted your worldview, especially on the topic of origin? In what way, yeah, has that informed your worldview? I would love to know or to hear from you. Now, I want to give you an example why this is so important. For example, why I say culture. I work here with students. So I'm a student worker here in Ghent, and I work basically with a lot of international students. The organization that I'm part of, we have about 50 students, and I think about half of them are international, a little bit less. And over the last 2 years, especially, we've had a lot of students of Asian countries and some from African countries as well. And I have noticed that the culture plays a big role in that. So, for example, the worldview that's already part of the religion, of the culture, is actually going to inform a lot. For example, with religion, some countries have a tendency to be more religious than others, just because it's so ingrained in the culture. It's a way of thinking. But with my Asian friends, for example, I've noticed it's not just the way of thinking or the way of upbringing, but or religion being passed on from one generation to the next, but also very often the difference between a community-based culture, which is a lot more on the whole community as a group. We function as a group, we function as a family, versus here in Western cultures, we function a lot more individualistically. So I found that, for example, with Asian students, some of them from China, some of them from South Korea, when they would come here, they would get depressed, and to the point where they get suicidal often, just because of the fact that there is not a community for them to land in, and because this is a very individualistic, isolated culture. We're on our own islands most of the time, and it's very hard for us to let different people in. The way, or what I've noticed in my experience of working with international students is that when they come in, Belgian students tend to often sometimes have a more Belgian students that are not exposed to a lot of international students or to a lot of traveling. Let me put it like that. Um, they have the tendency to be very closed off, and it make it hard for international students to actually integrate with them. And in that you can see what is our worldview towards the rest of the world. It's like now with Corona, we're closing our borders, and you can even hear a lot of Belgians say like um, we should close our borders again. And you hear that there is a side with students that are open to international students and to international experiences, but those are also the ones that already have had the experiences. If you look at the rest, we're very closed off. And if you then look at, for example, the Asian students, some of my friends, then you see that they actually come from a community background where for them the importance of the group, the priority of the group, the goal of the group always goes before the goal of the individual person. Now, here in Belgium, it's exactly the other way around. The individual or the person comes first, and then later on, we might actually think about the importance of the group and the goal of the group and what is good for the whole group. It's like now with Corona, how many people actually didn't follow yet the lockdown or look at the lockdown parties? The individual, like the person, individual is Dutch word, guys, sorry. The person and what he finds important, what he wants to do, goes before, or like prime, is more important than what the group actually needs at that point. Where you see, as in Asian countries, the group always goes before the individual. The family always comes before the person. So they actually look at that from a different point of view. I have this one friend that, well, actually multiple, that I was so shocked when they told me that they studied what they studied, not because they liked it. And I mean, these are some brilliant people. They have PhDs and everything, but they studied what they studied and got the degrees they have because of the sake of the family and their parents, because the culture is you support your family, you support your parents. And I can fully understand that. I think it's something beautiful. But just to point out different worldviews, different perspectives from different points. And I think we have sometimes a tendency, since we are in this Western culture, to actually look at it from a very Western point without looking at it from different perspectives, because we are stuck in our worldview and we're often not aware of what that entails. So that's basically the debate that I wanted to, or the discussion I wanted to start tonight. Okay, I'm quickly checking YouTube. All right, so what informs our worldview, that I've already asked. Now, there are basically different worldviews that I want to talk about with you tonight. And I want to give you a few examples of that as well. But I first wanted to basically talk about, and see where it is. Yep. Guys, I'm so sorry. My slides are one big mess tonight. If it's easier, I can stop using them. But all right. So I want to talk to you about, is there something like complete objectivity or subjectivity? I was talking with a scientist from Hong Kong this week, and he's actually an academic scholar. He teaches there. I was listening to a webinar of his today, and we were talking about, can you be completely objective or subjective in a certain situation? For example, let's say, well, I'll take an example from my own field. I'm an occupational therapist from education. I worked as one for about 3.5 years. And at one point, we came across ethical issues as well. And ethics is one of the topics that I studied as well, and that we had to study. And now, one of those conversations, even now in my current job as a student worker, that I have on a regular basis with my coworkers, is how do we make decisions? Some things are purely ethical, some things we make emotional, and some of them we make principle based. Now, if we make them principle based, then obviously we eliminate a lot of the emotion, the feelings that's behind it, and that is actually not healthy. But if we want to be completely objective, is that even possible? For example, we were once worked in a nursing home where we said, like, okay, we need to we have two elderly people, and they basically want to form a relationship, and we've got them having, well, sex at the in their rooms. But I mean, the rooms are not closed, they're not locked, windows mostly in a U form, and you see those kind of things. And then you have to make a decision. Now, you can feel from your worldview, no, they're elderly, they can still have sex, they can do whatever they want. But let's say they have dementia, or like at least one person has dementia. That kind of changes the things. So where does family come in? Where does it not come in? Do we even put people like that in a nursing home? And then your worldview, if whether that's individualistic or you come from a community-based culture where that community is part of life, taking care of each other gives meaning to our lives, doing things as a group gives meaning to our lives, then that shapes those answers. But I can also obviously be subjective and make a decision feeling based, but I actually need to handle principle based there, taking into account my worldview, the different worldviews from those people, and then their medical history. But if you look into as an OT, we had to do research as well to new treatments and to new treatment plans and evaluate how they were working as an OT as well, and or like in our practice. Now, at one of those points, you need to observe your patients and your clients, and we had to observe them and then describe in very detailed how they did certain movements, for example, and then how they did certain therapies in sessions at that moment. Now, we observe that. So we just write down facts, literally what we see. That is objective. You like no interpretation allowed yet. But with every research, with every project that you do, every case study you do, there is a point where you need to start interpreting the data. And it's at that point where, even though in science and as an OT in my field as well, where they say like, no, we need to be completely objective, there is a point where we can ask ourselves, can we actually be completely objective and leave our worldviews, our past, our personality completely out the door? Because that's what that is asking. So objective, according to Cambridge Dictionary, is based on real facts and not influenced by personal beliefs or feelings. Now the question is that the case? Can we ever be truly completely objective? I think we can attain it, or I think we can try it and reach for it, but can we truly be it? Subjective is influenced by or based on personal beliefs or feelings rather than based on facts. So that's a question. If we ask that, if we look at different things around our building up our worldview, even, are there certain things that we can base on proven things, on objective cases, and is our worldview mainly subjective? Now, I'll explain in a moment why I'm asking that situation, or why I'm asking that question. All right, so let's go to the next one. The reason I'm asking that question, wow, yep, my slides are such a hustle. All right, the reason why I'm asking that question is because of this. We have different worldviews, and we have multiple different worldviews. And basically, if you look at it according to Ravi Zacharias, If you don't know him, go look up the ISIM Rafi Zacharias Institute. You'll find a lot of stuff on worldview there. He's a huge blessing to talks like this. Now, if you look according to him, there are three different worldviews. We often say we have naturalism and theism, atheism, theism, but we actually have more than that. But today, I want to talk about three main categories where you can actually put all the others under. I want to talk about the first one as only the universe exists. The second one, which is completely to your right on your screen, is only God exists. And the third one in the middle is both God and the universe exist. Now, only the universe exists. Well, basically, we can fill that in. It talks about naturalism and atheism and all the others that fit under that. We can actually put everything under there that says we only have the universe here and now, only what we can measure with our five senses. That is the only reality we have. We are so-called realists. Then we have only God exists. Now, some Asian religions and cultures, they do believe that only God exists. And I have heard some belief systems as well that add up with that. I think personally, the third one is the best option or is a good option as well. And then as a third one, you have a third option. Both God and the universe exist. And that's where actually the biggest categories fall under. You have theism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. You can account on that. So atheism basically means there is no such thing as God. There is no God. Point. Theism means there is a God. It doesn't define yet which God or which religion. Theism is a broader term from there is one God. And then you have pantheism, polytheism, and there's a lot of theisms more. But this is the basic categories. Now, why I'm putting these out there like this? Because if you understand this, then it's all right for you to not know everything about every single worldview that there is out there to make up your mind. If you actually have knowledge of just the basic foundations, the key of those three, you can make an informed decision. Now, why am I putting it like that? Because that's basically what you research and what we start thinking about. So if we want to answer those 5 questions that I pointed out in the beginning, then in the end, a lot of it comes down to what are these 3 saying? For example, only the universe exists will say the universe, some might say the universe created itself. There is no such a thing as life after death. That is death. You return to dust. We put you in the ground and that's over. Very harsh to say, but that's basically what it comes down to. The meaning of life, some might fill that in as the meaning that you yourself give to life. And then morality is the morality that we make up ourselves. It might be the law. That then will differ as well. With both God and the universe exists, you basically start creating a funnel. So you still have to answer those 4 basic questions. What is our origin? What is our morality? What is our the meaning of life? And what is our destiny? And that is what makes the difference between only the universe exists and both God and the universe exists, is that you basically create a funnel where you say God exists, and all your answers on those 4 questions, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, they have to go through the funnel. They have to go through the funnel of there is such a thing as God. Now, how can you make those all add up? Because this is a lot of information. Basically, now I have to find this one again. Yep. Basically, sorry, if you hear something, I'm sitting on a bouncing ball. That's kind of my favorite thing to sit on. So no worries. Basically, if you form a worldview and I've just shown you those 3, then you need to start answering those 4 life questions of origin for yourself. And then your answers will fall into one of those 3 normally. Now, if you've answered those 4 life questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, then those 4 answers, they need to be correspondence in truth, and they need to be coherence of worldview. Now, difficult words, what I mean means this. Your answers need to be in accordance with what was found truth. For example, there are people out there that, and there are worldviews out there. Well, there's actually basically only one worldview out there that says that Jesus was not raised from the dead, that Jesus was not crucified. I'll put it like that, sorry. That Jesus was not crucified. Now, that's one worldview that says that, versus where historians actually say, both Christians, Greek, Jewish historians, Roman historians, and historians that do not have a religion, have been able to prove that Jesus was crucified to the point of death. Now, then some people in one specific worldview comes and says, like, no, that was not true. He was not dead. Versus where so many historians and scriptures basically say, like, no, Jesus was crucified till death, and he was really dead. That is a proven fact. So we cannot put any answers in there for either origin, meaning, morality, and destiny that are not in correspondence with truth. That's not an option. And then those 4 questions that we answer together, all the answers need to form a coherence of worldview. That means I cannot say, like, destiny, I believe there is life after death, and then say in origin, I do believe the world created itself, and then there was no such thing as creator, and then say as morality, I believe that there is such a thing as a universal law. I mean, if there is a universal law, there needs to be a lawgiver. If there is a universal morality, there needs to be someone that puts that into place. If we say, I believe there is life after death, then how can we say the universe created itself? There is no such thing as a creator or as any like that. So just to say, there has to be a correspondence in truth. We cannot put things in there that are not truth if they are proven historically, for example, like the example I just gave with Jesus, then that's fact, and we cannot go around that. And we need to put truth in our worldviews and in our answers on those 4 questions. But there also needs to be a coherence. We cannot say, I believe that that God created the earth. I believe that there is life after that, but I do not believe there is a moral law that we need to adhere by. There's only what you as an individual want. Okay, that's a perfect incoherence of worldviews right there. So to form our worldview, we need to make sure we have those 2 in check. Now I'm quickly going to check. Yeah, okay. I'll read that in a minute, because I would love to. There are a few comments on YouTube. I'll read those in a minute. I have seen them. We're almost through. If you have any questions or comments in the meantime, things you agree with, things you don't agree with, different perspectives, please feel free to add. I would love to learn from you all and to let us learn from all the messages that you send in. So thanks for doing that. Then basically, I want to end off with this. Yep, sorry. Next time, work in progress, slides. Yay. So I want to end off with this. The worldview and the gospel. How does the gospel determine and inform our worldview? And I've made this very simple graphic, but it's actually very easy. It's actually very coherent. So to kind of give you a summary for why I believe the gospel is the worldview that has the most coherence in itself. Now, I would highly encourage you to search it out for yourself, but this is basically what we believe. I would love to debate this with you as well, or to just discuss or have answers, questions, stuff like that. So basically, if we look at those four things that we need to answer to get to our worldviews, we need to answer origin. So here for the gospel, we say God created the universe. He created mankind, and he created mankind in his own image or in his own likeness. So origin is God is a creator, and we believe there is a creator and that we are created beings. That's what the Bible says. And if you look into meaning, the meaning that the Bible gives to life is that we exist to honor God, to love God, and to love people. But God also gives a very unique purpose and calling to every single person's life. So you have the common meaning and calling, but there's also a unique one for every single person, according to the Bible. If you look into morality, how does the Bible or the gospel answer the question of morality? And for those who don't know what the gospel is basically the story about Jesus Christ, his death and his resurrection, and how he came to basically through his death reconcile us with God, so we could have a restored relationship again with God if we wanted to, and give us eternal life and forgiveness of anything and everything that we did wrong, would basically bridge the separation between us and God. So that's the gospel in a very short notice. But so if I use the word, that you just know what it means. But with morality, the Bible actually says, according to the gospel, it says God is the standard in morality. We have all messed up. We've all fallen short of the glory of God, it says in Romans. And basically, God is the standard in morality, and none of us is matching up. Every single one of us has made mistakes. Every single one of us has messed up. Basically, every single one of us is separated from God. And if you're separated from God, and the Bible calls it sin, then you cannot then you cannot be in his holiness, because we are not measuring up to the standard that he intended for us in the very beginning, before we messed it up. And in that morality, the Bible still is the standard of God's morality. The gospel is still the standard of God's morality. God is the standard itself. Now, because we did not match up right then and there, he said, okay, I'm going to send Jesus, my son, to basically bridge that gap, fill in the separation, make up for the mistakes and the messes that we made, and have forgiveness for our sins and for the things we did wrong. Because I mean, where there is no standard in morality, we do things wrong. Where there is no moral standard. And then he sent Jesus to make that up, for offer forgiveness. And then we come to the last part, destiny, to give us eternal life. And the Bible says there is life after death. And specifically, you have two options. Either you spend eternity with God, or you spend eternity without God. This is basically very short, the gospel. But if you accept Jesus into your life, for example, then you get to spend an eternity with God. So the choice is eternity with God or without God, according to a Bible point of view, really. So that's in short the worldview and the gospel. Now, there are a lot of other worldviews. Some of them hold inconsistency, some of them don't. But the important thing is that we actually start researching this and start looking into what has formed my worldview. What is my worldview? Because reality is, it determines and influences every aspect of our lives. If I make decisions, and the reason why I do this, what I do as a student worker, is partially of this. But for me personally, it was a journey of doing research, of going and investigating, reading a book about Islam, reading a book about atheism or naturalism, and actually start doing research as into what is my worldview supposed to be, what is truth, and is there evidence for answers on those four questions? Because I do believe we're smart people, we all have a brain. I do believe in that we all get to a certain point of truth, and that we can find how we can answer those 4 questions within truth. And those 4 answers and those 4 questions will determine what our worldview is. Now, with that said, let me see if there are any questions out there. So I'll read one comment. If you have a question, please do type it in. If you have a comment, just let me know. But this is basically the part where we can engage. We can also engage during the Skype in a bit. But there's one comment I really would like to read. So basically, I don't actually still don't know your name, but there's this one person here on the chats on YouTube that is studying geology, and he says that we say that the Earth and universe are 4.6 and 13 billion years old, but when you see the detailed chronology and at what point humans came into existence, it looks like humans were designed to fit in. The creation story of the Genesis fits with what geology has discovered, but only the fact that God did it in a week and human appreciation of a week is 13 billion years is amazing. That is indeed amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I would love to hear more about that, by the way. So if at one point we can definitely chat about that. I don't know if there are any other questions. I'm still looking quickly. No. Okay. So then with that said, basically my worldview personally, after doing research, reading books, and I'm still reading books on it from different points of views. I'm still learning every single day. But after a lot of research and reviewing where I come from, and I still have a lot to learn about culture as well. But my worldview is worldview and the gospel. Now, it's important that you can explain it as well for yourself, and that you know how it influences your daily life and your daily decisions that you make. Now, the gospel in itself has certain influences on your life. It's not just about accepting Jesus into your life, but then there becomes a community where you can be part of. So there's a lot of stuff on that, but every single worldview influences your life in different ways. And the gospel is not so much one of law, as in of grace and forgiveness, as in that God wants to empower you to have a relationship with Him, to have eternal life, but also to have freedom and to know truth. And that those are a few aspects of the gospel, that are just very, very nice. So I would highly encourage you today, please, since there are no other questions. Oh, yeah, there is. Cool. All right, thank you. I just saw that one. So, if our morality is based on the gospel, then what about God being presented to be a very wild God when He will order people to be killed? Any explanation? So I'm going to read it again just for myself. Sorry. If our morality is based on the gospel, then what about God being presented to be a very wild God when He will order people to be killed? Any explanation? Okay, so I'm assuming that you're talking about the Old Testament right here. Now, basically, I'm assuming that you're talking about the Philistines in particular, for example, Sodom and Gomorrah as well. That those are kind of the examples that I'm assuming you mean with your question. I'm just gonna keep checking. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you're referring to God being presented in the Old Testament with so much cruelty. Okay, I love that question. It's a good question. I have been asked it before. I think I can still learn a lot in my answer, but this is how far I've gotten so far with my answer and with my research. So basically, if for me to answer that question, we need to review the Old Testament in its entirety. Now, God, according to the Bible, from the beginning, God had a plan to make sure that men could get reconciled and restore their relationship to him and have eternal life through Jesus Christ. Jesus was not a backup plan. He was part of the plan from the beginning. He's been involved in every step of the process. So that's something I just want to make clear first. He was part of that plan. He was part of that process from the beginning. There is no such thing as a backup plan with God, as in like, oh crap, I never thought they were going to eat from that tree and that they were going to choose to not have a relationship with me. What am I supposed to do now? And I don't think he was putting his hands in his hair because of that happened. No, like he knew, he was prepared from way ahead, from much before creation. And Jesus has always been and was always part of the plan. So there is no such a thing as a backup plan with God. The gospel was the plan. Sending Jesus to reconcile men with God was part of the plan. Now, for me to answer that question, you first have to understand who God is. God is and always will be a loving God. That's in his nature. God is love. God is love. His whole person oozes love. That's why he created, according to the Bible, mankind as well, because he wanted a people that he could love. Now, with that said, God is also just. And if you are just and he is also judge, then if a law is broken, there are consequences of that. It's as logic as that. If I drive too fast and I get caught, then I am going to go to court and I'm going to have a fine to pay. Or if I get caught drunk driving and I have a car accident, for example, then, well, obviously, they're going to sue me. I have the consequences of my car is wrecked, which no one's going to do anything about. And then I also have to go to court, pay a fine, and I will be convicted. But so God is a just judge, and he needs to be, because it's in his nature. It's part of who he is. Yet on the same time, God is love and he is forgiving and gracious as well. And that's as much in his nature. So if you look at the Old Testament, you need to understand Jesus wasn't there yet. So they were living in a time where there was no way for them to actually pay the price. So the moment Adam and Eve were the first humans, chose to no longer have relationship with God, and that was a choice out of free will that God gave them, because without free will there is no such thing as love. If I put a knife to your throat and say you're gonna marry me and you're gonna love me and you're gonna love our lives together, then that is no love, that is coercion. So with love always needs to come free will. So God gave us that. Now we don't want a relationship with God. And God says, well, you've messed up here. You've broken relationship. But over time, I want to give you back the option to have a relationship with me. And basically in the Old Testament, what you saw happening is that God tried to restore relationship again and again with humans by saving them. He again and again, through the people of Israel, tried to actually make the nation see like, hey, these are my people, I'm with them, do you want to join them? So the people of Israel was like, okay, they saw the people around them, the nations around them, they saw what God was doing for Israel. And then, well, basically the nations around there, they were meant to look at Israel and say like, oh, we want that too, we're going to start believing in the same God. Now obviously that didn't happen a lot. That happened with a few people, but not with people groups or nations. But that was God's redemptive plan back there. Now, the Old Testament is meant for showing that we couldn't make it on our own. We could not restore the relationship with God on our own. Even though the Israelites constantly tried, it just wasn't an option. It just didn't work, because God is holy. He is completely set apart, and we cannot measure up to that, because we had broken our relationship with him, because we had that separation with him. Now, to answer your question, I've taken a long detour, but it was important to understand and to explain who God actually is. Um, God still wanted the people to be reconciled to Him, so He did. He made ways for them, or for the Israelites at least, and for the surrounding nations. They were able to look at Him, to look at Israel, and like accept God as their God as well. They just didn't do that. With the killing of the Philistines, for example, or um, Sodom and Gomorrah, God had been sending prophets after prophets and giving them opportunity and opportunity and warning after warning, um, that they should stop living in sin, that they should stop. I mean, those were horrible people. They literally sacrificed children. Um, they um, they made all kinds of blood sacrifices. They had prostitutes in the temple. There is this one part, it's Sodom and Gomorrah, where I think Sodom and Gomorrah is, yeah, where they literally would try and rape a man that came to visit. I mean, this is pure evil. This is even something that we don't allow in our society today. Um, Now, and God had been giving them warnings after warnings for hundreds and hundreds of years. Please stop doing that. Stop sinning. And He had tried to reconcile them to them. But after hundreds of years of trying to do that, there is a point where God says, this has gotten way out of hand. It is spreading. I cannot let that happen. I need to start protecting the other people as well. Or not start, but I need to, like, there is a point where God needs to be just and no longer just loving and gracious and forgiving. So at that point, that is the point He said, you have to kill them. And He killed them. But it's not because God is not loving or not gracious. It is because after hundreds of years, and if I remember correctly, it's about 400 years of trying to warn them, to get them to turn from their ways, to reconcile them to God. God had to be just at one point in order to preserve the other nations as well. But if you look at, for example, Nineveh, Jonah was sent. I don't know if you know Jonah, but Jonah was sent to Nineveh to go warn the people. Now, that is exactly what God did with Sodom and Gomorrah and all the other cities. He always sent people to go and warn them. He sent people ahead. He didn't just kill them. The difference is with Nineveh, they actually took Jonah's warning and it was turned around. They heeded the warning. And then God spared them. God forgave them. There is this one point that where Abraham is asking for his people, like, God, I think it's Abraham. I'm not sure. I think it is. God, if you can find 10 righteous people here, please save them, spare them. And God listens to that time and time again in the Old Testament. So I think we often, yes, it is in there. We cannot deny it. But the love and the grace and the years that has gone before that of God trying to reconcile them and to get them, like, hey guys, what you're doing is plainly wrong. It's I cannot, like, there is forgiveness, but I cannot stand it anymore. You have to change your ways. Well, if they do like Nineveh and change their ways, then there is forgiveness and grace. If they don't, and after hundreds of years of God giving them warnings, then God had to intervene in order to still be a just God, because He wouldn't be just if He didn't intervene, especially when we're talking about sacrifices, child murders, blood sacrifices, temple prostitutes, and a whole lot of more of debauchery. So I think, yeah, I hope that answers your question a little bit. Yeah, so I don't know. So if that answered your question, maybe just type yes quickly. Are there any other questions? Because I love that one. Thank you for asking it. It was a really, really good question. Any other questions? I'm kind of checking here on different channels to see if there are other questions. No? No? Okay. So in the meantime, while I'm still waiting to see if there is a reply on a Facebook or on the YouTube chat, I want to quickly announce what's going to happen over the next few weeks. So we are still going to keep continuing our lives. We're also going to have a Google Hangout party after every live on Thursday. Next week we are starting with a new sermon series, and well, since we are doing this live, and since this coronavirus thing and the quarantine and the lockdown has all set us with a lot of challenges, I actually want to have you choose. So I need your input, or we need your input as a team. So Laura and I will post over the next few weeks, over the next week, basically tomorrow, a poll on the sermon topics, and the topic that has the most points or votes, that will be the sermon topic for next month. So for now, Laura and I don't know where it is, but I have so many papers. I'm old school. Trying to be modern and still being old school and writing everything down. But we were thinking about prayer, finances, joy, and then another one. So we'll make a poll, and then please do vote. Let us know what you would love to hear. Let us know what you would love to do. And then, yeah, that will be our sermon topic for April. Now, let me check YouTube one last time. Okay, you're saying yes somehow. Okay, can I, you want to explain more, or can we go over this discussion on Google Hangouts? Yeah, so that's basically it for me tonight. I'm just looking to see for this YouTube reply still. But that was it for me tonight. If there are no other questions, then I am looking forward to seeing you on the Google Hangout. I'm going to start that up right now. And then I'm looking forward to chat with you. You can still ask me questions in the Google Hangout. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. If you haven't had dinner yet, then please do still send us a picture of what you're having. Enjoy your meal, enjoy your evening, and I'll see you soon. Okay. Oh, there is another question. Okay, and about destiny for eternity is with God. Can you explain how the righteous of the Old Testament have received their judgment? Hold on, I'm just gonna think about that question real quick. Destiny for eternity is with God. Can you explain how the righteous of the Old Testament have received their judgment? So, okay, so eternity is with God. Okay, so let's start with defining righteous. So the righteous in the Bible are described as those people who've accepted Jesus in their lives and who are righteous in God's eyes, so who follow God and His commandments. Now, obviously, no one of us is perfect. We are all part of a fallen world, basically, or part of a separated world from God, and we can bridge that separation through accepting Jesus in our lives. Now, I like the question on, can you explain how the righteous of the Old Testament have received their judgment? Okay, so I like the question on, I like the question in the sense that Jesus came after them. So that is completely true. Now, there are different theories on that, and on how that went. Now I have to think my theology books. So if I remember correctly, but let me look it up and I'll get back to you. But if I remember correctly, then the people that had a vibrant relationship with God, they also will get saved. So if we're talking about that question, we are talking about first and second judgment. So the first judgment, according to the Bible, is basically, have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Yes or no? And the second question is, if you haven't received Jesus, how did you live morally? And that then will determine what your afterlife is going to look like according to the Bible. So they came after Jesus, yes, but I do believe I should actually look it up. But I do believe, like, I should look up the scriptures because I don't know the scriptures out of my head. But I do believe that, if I remember correctly, that basically there is a sort of a waiting where God is going to judge them under the old covenant, but basically, so Jesus wasn't there yet. And if you look at the sacrifices in the temple, for example, that they had to make, so lambs, offerings, and stuff, in order for them to receive forgiveness for sins, they had to make a sacrificial sacrifice in the temple multiple times a year. So, and that blood would then cleanse, that sacrifice would then take away their sins and offer them forgiveness for a certain time. So God put, even in the Old Testament, already a difficult word, it's called propitiation, in place to make sure that for them there was also something. Now, it wasn't sufficient, as in it wasn't the ultimate sacrifice once and for all like we had Jesus, but God put those temporary things already in place for them. So I do believe that the people that that appeared these sacrifices and these rituals and feasts that God put into place for that reason, and that generally had a relationship with God, they will obviously also have that. So, because they are still under the old covenant and not under the new covenant. Now, around how that specifically in practice will work, there are different theories out there. I haven't researched it enough, but I can look it up in my theology books if you want me to, and then I can get back to you in maybe a private message, if that answers that question. Now, a few of you have asked me where you can find the link for the Hangouts or how you can partake in that. I'm going to try and set that up right now. I'm sorry I haven't done so yet, but it was just because of the noise that it would give me. So I'm going to set that up right now. We're going to start that one. And yep, normally that should work. Hi, Britt. All right, I'm going to see if there was one last question. I'm sorry that answer was probably not sufficient for you, but I'll see you soon. I'll see you on the Hangout. Please do join, and then have an awesome week. I'll see you this weekend. This weekend we have another sermon. Monday we have lives, and we're gonna be posting a whole lot of exciting things. If you're not in a small group yet, and you're like, hey, I need community. Every one of us needs community, but especially now, we are moving all our small groups online at the moment. I'm starting a new one on Monday evening. So please, if you're not in one yet, feel free to join. Let me know, send me a message, or send us a message on campus. And then I will see you very, very soon. Have an awesome weekend. And yeah, see you soon. And don't forget to wash your hands. Bye.